This episode of the Shakeout Podcast is brought to you by Altitude Sports. If you're like me, then this time of year means training hard for your fall racing calendar. Whether you're looking for that go-to race day kit or clothing, shoes, and accessories ready to work as hard as you do in training, Altitude Sports has what you need to perform at your best, with a huge selection of running essentials from top brands like Hoka, Salomon, New Balance, and many more. Shopping is super convenient since it's all online, with fast next-day delivery anywhere in Canada, and same-day delivery if you're in Montreal. And if something doesn't fit quite right, no worries. Returns are easy and hassle-free. No printer needed, just scan the QR code they send you. So if you want to feel comfortable and confident in gear that works as hard as you do, be sure to check out Altitude Sports. Just use the promo code SHAKEOUT to get up to 20% off your first order. Conditions apply. You'll find all the details and the link in the description below.
So I think it's having a check-in with yourself. I think it's then sorting out what you want your priorities to be for you first, and then not asking those around you for support for permission. But we as women often ask for permission, but what you need to say is, these are my priorities in life, and I need your support. It's not a question mark, it's a statement.
Hello, and welcome back to the Shakeout Podcast. I'm your host, John Gay. On this episode of the Shakeout, we bring you part one of a two-part series looking at the growing gap between male and female participation in road races. In part two, we'll sit down with Charlotte Brooks, race director for the TCS Toronto Waterfront Marathon, to hear about the initiatives she and her race organizing team are championing to not only reverse the trend, but actively support female athletes. Today, we have the privilege of sitting down with Dr. Sasha Gollish, co-host of the Strong Girl Talk podcast, author of the Yellow Running Shoe newsletter, and chartered professional coach. A Canadian Masters record holder, Canadian University champion, and multi-time Canadian national team member on the road, track, and trail, Sasha has long been a champion of promoting initiatives that support higher female participation in athletics. She joins us today to share her perspective from a lifetime of involvement in running and highlight some of the promising initiatives currently underway. Sasha, welcome to the Shakeout Podcast.
It's great to be here. I'm giggling a bit. I'm like, oh gosh, I sound so ancient. But it brings wisdom. It brings wisdom, right?
It's a glistening CV you've got. You've earned every piece of it. And we could dive into any one of those different hats that you wear. But let's start with the work that you've been doing a lot of recently, which is with the Strong Girl Talk podcast and the Yellow Running Shoe newsletter. You've been really a champion for female participation in sport in this country. Tell us a little bit about what that's looked like from your perspective, the type of work that you're finding yourself involved in right now.
Oh gosh, I'm trying to learn how to say no, because it's all so exciting as everything's, the conversation's really shifting around, these categories and the inclusion of female athletes. I think one of the coolest things that we've been talking about lately is like, well, what if we just put the women first and design the rest of it around us? And, I think Athlos in particular is really leading the charge with that. I think Grand Slam Track really tried to do it from a gender equity lens. And yes, I'm speaking very much to track and field events. The road's always been the leader in gender equity, right? Prize money has always been, for the longest time, equal, across both categories. But, we know there's a long way to go when it comes to sponsorship and other things and how we tell stories. And so I'm forever grateful about where we've come from and where we got to. And instead of, looking at it through a negative lens, I'm always asking the question like, okay, well, what can we do next and how do we make it better?
What are some of the things you're really excited about? What are some of those positive trends or positive changes that are being made right now?
Let's start from the top down. Let's celebrate world athletics, right? They're really pushing for gender equity, not just with the athletes, but they're talking about coaches and they're talking about officials, right? Let's celebrate Lisa Ferdinand, right? The Canadian who started the 100 meters men's final. Right? Mm-hmm. The stories that they're telling about these women, that it's the career options aren't just as being an athlete, that there's so many more. I'd say here in Canada, we just had an election. It's a little bit of a unknown time as it relates to sport. The budget won't be announced until October. But here's what I do know from a strength-based perspective. Minister Adam Van Couverden now, I should call him Minister Van Couverden. Sorry, Adam. he was appointed as the Secretary of Sport, and I can't think of a better male ally to be in that seat to promote gender equity in all sport. I'm going to celebrate the work of Tennis Canada. I think every single NSO and PSO can learn from Tennis Canada and their gender equity conference. Cycling Ontario just announced not only a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, but a separate gender committee. And I think those are the great things that are happening at the grassroots level. We see all of these people out running with their kids. Charlotte Brooks is like the leader of the Canadian running series now, new mom, basically starting again. She's going to show her son, what it is to be a mom in sport. I think at all levels, we've just got this excitement around being active, not just for us, but for our kids and for our communities.
Yeah, it is so heartening to see these positive changes, both at the structural level, national sports organization, provincial sports organizations, but also, like you mentioned, at the grassroots level. Much of what you talk about in the Strong Girl Talk podcast relates to that grassroots level. What are some of the things that need to continue being done, or we need to start putting in place to encourage more young women and girls to not only enter into sport, but to stay in sport and to provide a base from which they can grow and have a really positive and lasting relationship with physical activity?
It's such a great question. It's one I wrestle with all the time. And I'm about to jump on a soapbox and kind of stand there with a megaphone and pom-poms. Maybe not pom-poms, maybe firecrackers.
I like that imagery.
I got a cape on too. Everybody should wear a cape when they get up on a soapbox. School sports. I think it's the missing piece of the conversation that we don't talk about enough. And when I say school sport, I really mean like school sport, physical activity, and recreation. Somebody said the other day, sporting recreation or sportive recreation. And it's like, so think about going just for a run with your friends and things get competitive and you're like, whoa, I'm in training right now. I shouldn't be running this fast. Like that's this like sporting recreative, so that there's just this broad spectrum. But the biggest opportunity that we have is school. And, from competitive sports to intramurals to just a place to play, we know that classrooms are in crisis. And the greatest thing that we could do is let kids be active and get that energy out. I almost would I laugh about it when they're like, okay, I'm a math nerd. Just everybody knows I'm a math nerd. I love math. I know everybody doesn't love math. I get it. It's hard. It's different. It's a different way of thinking. We have 100 minutes of math scheduled in Ontario every day. Can you imagine yourself now sitting down in a chair to do 100 minutes of math? Like, I love math. I can't do that. I need breaks. I have to go for a run before. Actually, I desperately want to go for a run, but we're not talking about my injury. I have to do something. And yet, we are asking young children to sit in desks all day and quotation marks behave. Just let them play, please. If we want to keep them in sport, especially girls who we know still don't have those options in the community, school is the gateway for everybody to have a place to play.
Absolutely. And it is that great leveling and equalizer where they're all going through the same education system. It provides the same opportunities, at least it should be providing the same opportunities. We're seeing, I mean, you're mentioning even the school system needs adjusting. Are there other structural barriers, maybe specific to women or girls, that are preventing them from achieving, I don't want to say their potential in sport, but their potential to make sport a part of a balanced life?
I'll speak to two reports. So I'm going to start with the Canadian Women in Sport Rally Report from 2024. One of the big challenges is uniforms. I'm actually going to celebrate World Athletics again. I don't know, there was no announcement made, but I don't know if you've noticed, but in the relays, not everybody's wearing the same kit anymore.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're wearing your nation's jersey and matching shorts, and you have to have an approved kit as part of World Athletics. But they changed that rule to be like, no, we just want everybody to run their best. And so we need to think about that in uniform. We know that so many girls, and I'm going to include gender diverse people here as well, if the uniform makes them uncomfortable, they're not going to put it on, so they don't come, right? And I don't just mean the soccer and the basketball uniform, right? I'm thinking about, swimming, right? Like we used to laugh about this in cycling, but there's a required costume. We can say the same thing about running, right? Like there's a little bit of this expectation that you show up in a pair of super shoes with, I'm going to talk about girls for a second, short shorts or buns and a crop top. That doesn't work for everybody, right? All these different intersecting identities from like race, ethnicity, culture, how you show up in your skin, where you are in the time of the month with your period, right? Like, I think those are conversations that need to happen. And then the ASICS Move Her Mind study, where we talked about, challenging gendered expectations about what movement is, making it more accessible. But I just think that we need to shift, right, back to my first point around, instead of thinking it through a male designed lens and adding and adding and adding, well, what if we thought about it through a female bodied lens? And started from there, like what structural changes then actually happen. So we talk more about periods. Everybody would have period products in their bags and their kits that they brought to practice. Uniforms would have a very open conversation, and there would be diversity in what the offerings are. We change how practice works just to let everybody show up and be the best version of themselves, because actually that's how you're going to win the game or win the race.
You talk about shifting the perspective to a women's first, and you're quite right in pointing out that historically sport has always been a place where women can be treated like little men, and that's not what they are. And we've seen that simply doesn't work. I love that you bring up the uniforms, and that initiatives like what World Athletics are doing are allowing for a far broader range of options so that people can choose what works best for them rather than trying to be shoehorned into some tight parameters of what they can or cannot wear as a woman, or a male for that matter. You also you touched on this earlier, and saying that road running has really led the charge for a long time. Are there initiatives that you've seen, whether as an athlete yourself or just being involved in the sport, that you're excited about, or that you can point to right now that are doing a better job of leading from a female first perspective instead of trying to reinvent a male centric model for female athletes?
So let's tell about 3 marathons. Let's celebrate Toronto with Charlotte. Let's celebrate the New York Roadrunners New York Marathon. And I'm going to celebrate Erica Edwards-O'Neill, their Senior Vice President of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion. And one other thing, sorry, Erica. And the Boston Marathon. And the elite director at the Boston Marathon is also a woman. And I think we just think different, right? And it's not to say that we think to exclude men, but for a really long time, the system was like, let's just historically talk about Boston. And it's not pointing fingers, but like Boston literally was like, no, you're actually not welcome here.
Yeah.
Right. And when women are in these positions, they're not saying nobody isn't welcome here. We're saying everybody is welcome. And so, I think there's those 3 initiatives. Boston and New York are a little bit different than Toronto. They're by lottery. And they're actually, and I think Chicago is too. I can't remember. Sorry, Chicago, I don't remember your numbers. But if you take out the charity spots, it's a 50-50 balance between the 2 categories of men and women. And both of those races also have a non-binary category. And I think if you apply as a non-binary runner, particularly for Boston, if you have the time, like you kind of automatically get in. Because again, the percentages are so small. Like I think it was 0.02% of both of those races in terms of overall participation. Then let's think about what Charlotte does. And I apologize both to Boston and to New York because I don't know their policies as well. But Charlotte has, Run CRS has a deferral policy, for pregnant and postpartum women. And I think they introduced one if you have a miscarriage as well. They have feeding and lactation stations at their races. And they have a sustainability policy. And you're like, well, what does sustainability have to do with gender equity? But often women are leading the charge around sustainability. And so instead of siloing things, right, we're thinking about, well, how does that whole person show up? And so New York also, I think, achieved the sustainability standard as well. Again, Boston, sorry, I'm not as familiar with your race. I think those are initiatives, thinking sort of like locally and things that, I'm caring about the people that really matter the most to me and why I'm so invested in them. But there's so many races that are starting to think about things this way. And I think just by shifting the way that we're thinking and putting these things at the forefront, it will actually change things. Sport Canada just actually updated their carding policy for a pregnancy and postpartum card. I haven't read a ton about it. Jill Moffitt has posted all of the information on Momentum, so just go read it there. But those are the initiatives for a step forward. If I really want to put my gender equity hat on, and this is really important to me, when we talk about parenting policies, if we really want to make change, parenting policies aren't sex-based. Parenting policies are for everybody. And so, yes, females bear the children. We are the ones that birth the children. Okay. But when it comes to parenting, I think if we really want to see this shift in gender equity, we actually have to include everybody that's a parent in the parenting policy. So that's like when I'm thinking about strength-based, what do we do next? That's the next thing I really want to see.
It feels like a beautiful place to transition a little bit. You talk about that equity meaning for all people, and in this case, for parents, whether it's the person birthing the child or another primary caregiver, creating space for them. On that topic of equity for all people and making racing and training and participating in sport more accessible, I'm going to ask you to switch into your next hat, that of a elite marathoner yourself. You've been on some of the world's biggest starting lines, whether that be world championships or otherwise. What is some advice that you can give just practically to those who are struggling to find the time or the space to make training part of their routine? Maybe it's something that they want to be doing, but the demands of, let's say, work or of raising a family or of just social commitments are making it difficult to create that time and space to pursue a sport that otherwise they would be really keen on pursuing.
Brene Brown, thanks for saving my life a million times over. What is the story that you're telling yourself is the first thing to ask, right? And to sit down and really have a check-in with yourself and be like, hey, what's the story I'm telling myself about why I can't train? And then start to tease out the pieces that are true, the ones that are fabricated, and the ones that you're like, I just made this shit up. So I think it's having a check-in with yourself. I think it's then sorting out what you want your priorities to be for you first, and then not asking those around you for support or permission. But we as women often ask for permission. But what you need to say is, these are my priorities in life, and I need your support. It's not a question mark. It's a statement. There's always some give and take and choices. I don't like the word sacrifices because, again, it's really negative. I always said I made the choice to come back to professional running, and I make the choice to choose to train. And so I think when we shift and we think about making choices, I think it really changes our mental strategy around that. I think we also need to stop siloing things. So a lot of my friends are in the thick of parenting, right? Like their kids are in that high sport stage. The worst thing that we can do for our kids is actually sit on the sidelines where they think we're in judgment, right? When kids see us on the sidelines, often they think oh, you're judging me. What a great opportunity when you bring your kid to a sporting activity, physical activity, dance, or whatever it is. Doesn't matter. Go do your thing. It doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 seconds. Make that time. I don't remember the researcher that said it, but they said it so well. These devices that we carry in our hands all the time are pacifiers. Check in with your phone to actually see how many times a day that you pick it up. I'm going to throw my sister under the bus a little bit, but I really am celebrating her. I use my phone as a pacifier. I'm totally going through a really challenging time with this knee injury. I pick up my phone and I scroll social media. And it's not doom scrolling, but I just don't want to engage with the world.
Yeah.
Once upon a time, my sister smoked cigarettes. Okay, this is where I'm throwing my sister under the bus. Here's where I'm celebrating her. When she quit smoking, every time she wanted to have a cigarette, she did sit-ups, right?
Wow.
So, yeah, it's okay, that's really smart because, you're literally training your body to then not want cigarettes. And I'm like,
no kidding.
I'm putting that on. Every time that I want to pick up my phone, I'm going to lie down and do sit-ups. I'm going to do something that moves my body. One, it's going to break my pattern of using my phone. And two, I'm doing something healthy for myself. And so all of a sudden we start repatterning things. I think the pandemic, and I'm going to use Strava, I'm not picking on Strava, Training Peaks does this, that training score and training load score, I think that did such a disservice to us, right? Now all of a sudden we neglect our circuits, our strength training. Why? Because you don't get a big bubble on Strava. Why? Because it cannot measure the psychological and the cognitive engagement and the strength building that happens then. If you can, break up with Strava. It is so hard, and it's hilarious. Strava actually is not on my phone anymore because I'm walking. Nobody needs to see my walk. But I'm also not tracking my mileage, right? And I never use Strava in a way to communicate with people. It's purely to keep up with what my mileage was in a very numeric way. But if you are chasing a bubble on Strava or a training score, you have to break up with it. And you have to do the things that are meaningful for you. And you really just have to check in to prioritize and do the best that you can. Consistency wins every time over following a training plan. Let go of perfection and aim for consistency. Be gentle with yourself and really just, if you want to run that marathon, make it a priority, even if it's priority number 5 in your life.
I love that. I love that you talk about making a statement as well, not asking for permission, but starting down the path that you want to follow up on. And I think most people will be surprised that the community, the people around them, want to support them in that. Sasha, thank you so much for making your statement. Thank you for taking the time with us today. We wish you all the best as you make your steady return back to running. And we know that we will see you hopefully on a starting line yourself soon, but in the meantime, certainly around a great deal of starting lines. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you.
Another huge thank you to Sasha for sharing her insights with us on today's episode. For more of the great work she's doing to promote equity in sport, be sure to follow her on Instagram at @SGollishRuns and subscribe to her podcast, Strong Girl Talk. This has been part 1 of our 2-part series highlighting equity in road running, and you won't want to miss our upcoming conversation with TCS Toronto Waterfront Marathon Race Director Charlotte Brooks. Be sure to follow us on social media at Shakeout Podcast, and don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts so you don't miss a thing. I'm your host, John Gay, saying thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you soon for your next Shakeout.